and so the subject of universal basic income came up, and I think, it was, there was an instant like, that's narrative, that's BS, that's something. And then someone came forward and said, oh well, Charles Eisenstein, who I know you've spoke with extensively, has his own version of universal basic income that might be more lucid compared to Klaus Schwab and what his
Yeah.
plans are for us, right? Like, that's, we also get into trouble just naming things under one label.
Yeah.
And so Jen is here in the chat, and she asked me to ask you about this. I wasn't planning to, but what is your feeling about UBI?
Yeah, I did a video about UBI back when Andrew Yang was running for president, and I found, just like you said at the tail end of your question and comment there, that a lot of conservative media, for example, will view that as, no, that goes against conservative ideas and conservative values, and the progressives will present it one way, and it's like we're pretending that there's one or just two ways of looking at it, and there's a usefulness to this, but also there's another way to look at this. But what we're doing a lot of time is we are looking at any idea through the lens of, okay, how do we fit it into what we're currently doing, right? Or how do we fit it into what my current belief system of what humanity should be doing is? And I'm not saying, what I'm saying here is these are like easy thought exercises. Sometimes they take time to like go through and be like, man, like, should we even like re-examine how we're living in our society? Like, nobody thinks about that on a regular, well, I shouldn't say nobody, but a lot of people don't, right? So I'm not trying to sit here and pretend like, oh yeah, we can all just reimagine what our society is, but I do think we need to do it. Like, re-examine how we're living in our society. And with that said, with something like universal basic income, you think, okay, we live in a system right now that's not going to be changed overnight, right? I think we can all sit here and agree that, I shouldn't say all of us, but a lot of us are going to sit here and agree that the systems don't really operate for the thrivability of people, right? It's more so,
It's a debt system. It's a
right.
slave system.
It's a slave system. We're
Yeah,
enslaved
and we're the
by,
debtors.
exactly. The question becomes, we can agree on that in most cases. And for people, what I found is that for people who aren't aware of how the financial system functions, when you usually bring them up to what's going on in that regard and how the system works, they start to go, oh crap, like I get what you're saying. I don't know what the answer is. I don't know how to move forward, but I get what you're saying. Because it's pretty obvious, right? So the question becomes, okay, universal basic income, can it be, not saying the way Klaus Schwab presents it or the way, a Joe Biden might present it or even the way Andrew Yang presents it, but can something like that be a potential step in us saying, this might be a way for us to ease the boot, as Andrew Yang used to say, off of people's necks, so they can start thinking differently about what they want to do, right? So the idea is, if you pull someone out of survival mode, and I appreciated this about his approach, if you pull people out of survival mode, might they think differently about what they want to do and how they want to be in society?
100%.
Right. And so the question becomes, well, is it an evil socialist idea? Well, sure, if you want it to be. It could also be that, put socialism, democracy, communism, put it all aside for a second and ask the question, what type of world do you want to live in? How do you want it to look? Right? And we start exploring and talking about these ideas. Right? I always get a little emotional talking about this stuff, because to me, it's like we need to come together and we need to start thinking outside of what it is we're doing, right? And we're not going to do that by simply saying, well, this is that ism, this is that ism, and this is that. And that kind of sounds like it belongs in that box and that box. And like, all we're doing is coming up for every reason why not to think that we're capable of more than we're already doing. Why are we doing that? Like, it doesn't make sense, right? So all we're doing is coming up for every reason why not to think that we're capable of more than we're already doing. The question becomes, right, what are we truly capable of? And to not just immediately say, well, humans are all stupid and humans are all going to war with each other. And it doesn't matter because the deep state will stop everything. And it doesn't matter because we got to stop all that initial mind work and say, what do we want to do?
Exactly.
What world do we want to live in? What do we want it to look like? And at a grassroots level, do it. Start talking about it, creating it, presenting ideas. And, Charles spent a decent amount of time over the course of his career putting together various ideas that spark people's mind to say, perhaps this could be possible. Perhaps we could look at it that way. Right? I was having a conversation with my brother. He was talking about a specific tool that he bought not too long ago. And when he was buying the tool, he was like, "Oh man, I only need this for one project." When he bought it, he used it for that project. Then within 6 months, he started using it for all these other things that he didn't think that he would need it for. And what happened was, having the tool in his hand expanded his awareness as to what he could do, right? And what he could create and what was there.
Amazing.
And if he never had the tool, i.e., was never exposed to ideas, was never exposed to possibilities, was never exposed to new systems, how are you supposed to imagine what else is possible?
Mm-hmm.
So when we're tuning into the vast majority of mainstream media and the vast majority of alternative media, and that in a lot of cases is just saying, this is the world, here's who's bad, here's who's good, and here's how we need to fight it. What are we being invited to do? Right? See the world through just that lens of, we have to keep the world, for the most part, kind of the way it is. These are the confines, but we'd rather it be a little bit more like this or a little bit more like that. Well, what happens if we said, well, hold on, who made the confines, and can we stretch the confines a little bigger? And everyone's going to argue where we can't stretch the confines. I've been through this exercise. I've been doing this work for way too long. I've heard every comeback to this. But what I'm saying is something really expands when we start to think outside this everyday world all the time. And it doesn't mean we avoid it, don't look at it, and pretend that it's not happening, because it is part of our reality. It's in front of us. We don't want to try to escape from it. It means we want to be within it, see it, and go, what else is possible? And open that up with the frame of knowing what it is now, so that we know how we can move forward. Here's a square trying to force it through the circle. It's not going to work, right?
Yeah.
But if you said, okay, we have a blank canvas, and what could we do? And we talk about that, and we figure that out to some extent. It doesn't mean we know everything. It means we're willing to talk about it. Then what we say is, look, here's where we want to be. I'm trying to fit this on the screen. Here's where we want to be, and here's where we're at right now. Okay, so what we need to talk about is the space in between. And the space in between is saying, how do we transition there, right? How do we actually get there? And that's the part that's going to be a bit challenging. That's the part that could involve something like a UBI. It may not, but I don't know. The challenge right now is that we're being told as people, from something like the Great Reset, here's what the future and the transition will look like. And we're the billionaires who are going to own and control everything. And we can accept that reality. We can also say, well, hold on a second. It's funny that they say the Great Reset, because the Great Reset, we need a Great Reset. We need a great new system. We can all agree that we need that. So they're picking a fantastic marketing angle that touches upon a right intuition within people that something's not quite right. And the question is do we want to accept that particular vision for what they're presenting? And again, it's very easy to say, communism, whatever, blah, 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 blah. But again, setting it aside for a moment, what do we really want? What life do we want to live? How do we want it to look? And it seems absurd to ask those questions, because we go, there are so many more important things in the world to be talking about, or that we shouldn't even pretend about utopias or idealistic worlds or any of these things, because this world is too serious. It's like, great, hold that worldview longer and see how it feels. See how your insides tense up. See how you cannot find peace. See how you feel everything's against you. And then when we begin to drain and we begin to feel down inside, and perhaps we develop disease, or perhaps we cannot find peace, we say, okay, well, we know what the results are of holding on to and fighting something that we're resisting so hard, as opposed to saying, okay, I'm going to let myself dream for a second and sit with a group of people and talk about what that could be, and watch that dream slowly become a reality. I'm good.
Wow. That's so beautiful. What a great answer. It is so intensely complicated, because I came away from the discussion, Jen, just so you know, and there's so many questions, there's so many angles, there's they're very good at taking our creative ideas and making a mess of them, going sideways, keeping things about 80% true, but 20% is not good, and so that does cloud the ideas, and I just appreciate your perspective and the opportunity to think about something in a different way. And of course, at the end of the day, this is God's earth. That's my worldview, and it is one of great abundance, not scarcity at all.
Hmm.
Everything is rigged in our favor. You just so to imagine that we have to toil and slave and labor, that really is an evil thing. And do you think that people will lose their will to work? Because I think that's one of the criticisms of the UBI, that people will just sit around and do nothing, and they're like, oh, finally it's over. And my mom did that. She worked like an absolute demon for most of her life. She had her own business. They were very responsible. And she just could not wait for that moment where it was like, I do nothing. I'm doing crossword and I'm reading my book and I pat my cat and that's it. Everybody get away from me.
It's a fair question, absolutely, because it's like that's the way we know our world, and we know that if we aren't doing something, then we feel, with the way our world is set up, that could create a situation where everyone's like, ah, forget it, and then now maybe we can't progress, maybe we can't solve problems, maybe we can't build things, maybe these are fair questions. The challenge is it's like, I do think it's different for a lot of people. When you're feeling good, when you're feeling healthy, when you're feeling in a pretty good frame of mind, right, where pretty obviously say that you don't have a sort of an underlying anxiety or an underlying stressor or something like that. When you put yourself in that position, you think, man, whether it was when you were younger, in your teens or whatever, when you kind of really felt like anything was possible, whatever, before the stresses of life and our current system really might have changed the way you be. Did you want to just sit around and do nothing? Right? When you feel good, do you want to sit around and do nothing? No. Why do people have hobbies? They have hobbies because even in the moments where they might not be working, there's something they want to do. Whether it's creating, whether it's building, like people have so many different hobbies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anything from art to building to serving in community, and there's so many different possibilities out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there's something within us that you could even argue, there's scientific literature to suggest that even the basic psychology of a human when operating at a particular state is inclined to want to do stuff, right? We gain a sense of well-being from contributing. There's research on serving community, meaning that is to say like volunteerism, which is, I'm not getting paid. I just want to help somebody, or I just want to contribute to something. The research says that, people gain a deep sense of well-being from that. And it doesn't even come from whether they get recognition, but just from doing it. Right? So the question becomes, is it more in our nature, perhaps, to contribute in that manner?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? And you only need to answer this question for you. Because if you can answer it for you, then that's it. You don't need to worry about what everyone else is going to do. Because if you answer it for you and you live from that, then you're living from that. And if
That's
everybody
brilliant.
does that, then everybody's doing that, right? Whereas if you're worried about, okay, well, this person's not going to do it, my friend that's not going to do it, this guy down the street's not going to do it, then you won't do it.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course you have to sit there and say, I can't expect anybody else to do it if I'm not willing to do it, right? So the question, it's again a fair question, but I think it's one where it's like, I think if we were to reimagine our society enough, which is sometimes hard to do because we're not exposed with a lot of different ideas, if we reimagine it enough, we can actually start to say, well, is that even going to be a worry that somebody decided for 7 days they were going to camp out in the forest? Or are we brought up on this idea? I don't know the answer. I'm just presenting it. Something to think about. Are we brought up on this idea that we have to constantly be doing something for this world to even function? Why are we constantly doing something?
This is a collective exercise. We can never do this, especially not anything great alone.